In this video, we're going to explore field deployment tips to help make sure that your FieldTemp installation is as reliable as possible. These tips aren't specific to FieldTemp, but they're learned from years of experience deploying geophysical instruments in a variety of harsh conditions. The first tip I've got for you has to do with preparation. That's prepare everything in the lab. Don't worry about programming loggers in the field or trying to remember or look up in the manual how to do something. Get everything in the lab, out on the workbench, connected together, programmed and working so that when you get in the field, all you have to do is plug the cables in, turn the power on, and make sure there are no errors. While we're talking about turning the power on, we always recommend having your storage media like the SD card inserted before you power up the device. Sure, there are lots of error checking mechanisms built in, but it's just best practice to make sure that you only insert or remove SD cards when the device is powered off. Tip 2 involves that storage, SD cards. We have a whole video on SD cards that I encourage you to go watch, but the moral of the story is don't buy cheap SD cards. Buy good, high-quality SD cards. We recommend SanDisk's industrial line of SD cards, and keep those 32 gigabytes or less for your FieldTemp data logger. Tip number 3 is make sure you're keeping the inside of your electronics as dry as possible. That's most easily done with these desiccant packs that you can put in. You can either get these that are renewable, where you can microwave them or bake them and reuse them, or just get throwaway ones off Amazon. But either way, throwing a few desiccant bags inside your logger is never a bad idea to help keep the humidity inside the enclosure low as the outside temperature and humidity change and fluctuate. Tip number 4 is protect your wires. If you're somewhere where the wires can be easily accessed by animals, they probably will eventually find them and chew on them. You can either bury the wire just a centimeter or 2 deep with a shovel or even a hand trowel, or you can go to the hardware store and get cable armor. They have metal and plastic cable armor. Even pool discharge drain tubing, the flat tubing, works pretty well. Just something to give the animals a barrier before they get to your cable and chew through it and cause you to lose data. Tip number 5 is weatherproofing your connections. You can get self-sticking gummy tape that you can wrap around the connectors if they're going to be deployed for very long periods of time. I also recommend using dielectric grease in the connections. This is another thing that can help prevent any corrosion from getting into those connectors. Now, while all of these connectors are rated for submergence, continued submergence, we really encourage for those long-term deployments to take every step you can because nature can be just brutal on electronics. Tip number 6 also revolves around the wire, and that is the routing and strain relief of the wire. If you're connecting wire to, let's say, this stick here, this sensor string, I'm gonna go ahead and put my connector on. Right now, it would be easy if this were sticking above ground going down to my logger. Let's say I had a few sensors above soil level. Water would run right down this and then onto my logger connector. And again, while that connector is sealed, we want to keep water off of it as much as possible. So it's best practice to make what's called a drip loop. So the water would run down, come to the bottom and drip off and not have as much of a chance to get down to my instrument. If we look at the solar radiation shield and air temperature sensor, it can be as simple as securing the wire like this so that again, we get that nice drip loop on the bottom. This goes hand in hand with strain relief. So right now, if somebody were to trip on this wire and jerk on it, it would try to pull out of the connector and put strain on these electrical connections. While you're making your drip loop, you can provide strain relief as well. This can be done with a Velcro tie going around the wire. So if somebody jerks on the wire, it's just putting that strain in the wire, not on the connector. Or you can use a zip tie and do the same thing. Now, I know zip ties are universal, they're easy, they're cheap. I'm not the biggest fan of zip ties, to be perfectly honest, because the UV degrades them, they will eventually break and you lose your drip loop. They can also put a lot of stress on the jacket of the cable where their edges are, and then people either don't trim the end and leave this sticking out, or they trim it not flush, and this is razor sharp and can cut you when you go to retrieve your instrument. So zip ties are a last resort. I really recommend using Velcro, but providing strain relief and a drip loop can save you a lot of headache. Tip number 7 is understand your hardware. We've built in a number of features to help you during your deployment. For example, when you turn the logger on, in those first 15 seconds, it's going to take a reading regardless of what you have the interval set to, so you can see if there are any errors. You could even pull the SD card and look at that data, make sure that it's writing to your card as you expect. We've done this to help you troubleshoot, as well as provide things in configuration mode, like a real-time view of your temperature data. Also, when you turn the logger off, it goes into a safe shutdown mode, where it finishes any writes to the SD card and then powers itself down gracefully. We recommend letting it sit for about 15 seconds before you do anything, even though we have a number of safeties built in. It's just a good practice because you went to a lot of trouble to put all of these instruments in the ground. It'd be a shame to have not waiting 15 seconds cause an issue with your data. And finally, tip number 8 is minimize your exposure. This goes for several things. First, exposure to UV. UV, though all of these parts are UV resistant, or as UV resistant as they can be, is really harsh over years on instruments. So we recommend keeping the instruments covered and out of UV as much as you can. While this Nanook case is going to last many years, if you find somewhere where it's in shade for part of the day, that's going to help it last even longer. Same with the cables. Routing them through that rodent protection sleeve, the metal or plastic tubing, can also really help keep the UV off them. So anything you can do to minimize that UV exposure is a good idea. Now, when it comes to the second kind of exposure, that's exposure to people. The lower profile your site is, the less hazard you have of somebody vandalizing it. While the case is bright orange, and that makes it really easy to find if you're out in the middle of an Arctic tundra, it also makes it easy to find if you're in an urban environment. So camouflaging your instruments if you're in somewhere where there's going to be a lot of foot traffic can help maximize their longevity, as it keeps people from wondering what they are going over and poking around, or maybe getting malicious with them. The cheapest way we found to camouflage instruments is to go to your local sporting goods store and buy camouflage t-shirts, extra large or large t-shirts. They normally have shirts in the local store that match the local vegetation, so it's a very cheap and inexpensive way to just throw a shirt on the instrument and make sure that it stays nice and hidden. So that's a quick overview of the best practices when you're deploying the FieldTemp instruments, or really any geophysical instrument. I hope that you found these useful. Be sure to check out our other videos in the FieldTemp series, as well as everything else we have on our YouTube channel, website, documentation, and more.